connector is by József Balogh from UIUC. He's the advisor of Hong Yu, if anyone doesn't know. Yeah. He raised it great medicine. Yeah. Anyway, so he's going to talk about the robustness of the Erdős-Ko-Rado Theorem.
Thanks for the invitation. It's nice to be in Korea again. As it was pointed out, it's a really nice speaker list. Either one has to be really smart or advisor of the main organizer. Okay, so I will talk about the variations of the so-called Erdős-Ko-Rado Theorem. So let me remind you about the statement. So assume that H is a K-uniform intersecting hypergraph on a ground set of size N, and we assume that 2K is at most N, or it's more interesting that 2K is actually strictly less than N. Then the theorem says that the unique extremal system, so the maximum number of edges under the restriction that the hypergraph is interesting, is realized by the so-called star. So the star is a set system which contains one given element, so that each set in the set system contains one given element, and the size of the star is this n minus 1 choose k minus 1. So this theorem sparked lots of interest, and one of the central pieces of extremal set theory. There are many variations studied. For example, stability theorems. So one famous stability theorem is the so-called Hilton-Milner theorem, which determines the maximum size of an intersecting system, which is not a star. And I don't state the result because I don't have time to do everything in this lecture, but note that for this system, only one set is not in the star. So the perturbation is just with the one set. And there are other ways of measuring robustness of intersecting system. One possibility or one direction count them, and a typical result in this direction is that if we look at the all the intersecting K set systems, then almost all of them is a subset of star. So this suggests that the trivial intersecting families are overtaking or dominating the number of non-intersecting systems. Other direction research is considering some type of random subsystems, and there were many major results now not so recently by Schacht, Konlongauers, and also by the container method. So in the next couple of minutes, I'm talking about the following family of theorems. So again, the statement is that almost all intersecting K set systems are subset of star. And the reason that I'm telling that it's a family of theorems, that somehow this statement is easier when K is small, and it's getting harder when K is getting closer to n half. So one of the first results on this was proving the above theorem when n is at least 4K. As you can see, one of the organizers' name from the theorem, and I like this result because unexpectedly it uses the Bollobásh's set pair inequalities, and later another local person is present from the next theorem using the so-called removal lemma of Das and Tran. We improve the range of n where the above theorem holds, and this was proved independently by Frankl and Kupavskii, and more recently we get closer or made the range of n to be larger by Ramon Garcia, Lina Li, and Adam Wagner. And maybe I should talk a little bit about that proof, not much. So in this type of results recently, the so-called Shapovalov graph container method is used. There are many papers which are using this, and in this type of proofs, an important parameter is that when we have an intersecting set system, then we would like to see that how far it is from the star, and some people call it as the diversity of the set system. So it is the minimum number of sets needed to remove a set system to make a star. And the proof that we are proving this result is splitting into two, depending on if this diversity is small or big. And if the diversity is small, then this graph container method works well. If the diversity is big, then the previous method, the set pair inequality and the removal lemma works well. And one of the reasons that we get stuck at this range is that this is the point where the Krueger-Katona theorem gives a sufficiently big expanding. And the main conjecture of this theory is that if n is at least 2k plus 2, then almost all intersecting K systems are stars, and that's false for n is equal to 2k plus 1. And here we can actually conjecture that how a typical intersecting family would look like. So let me try to explain the conjecture. So here I list all the sets of size k, and I partition them into two classes. One part is the sets which are in the star, so that they contain element n, and other sets are which don't contain n. And if we recall what I said about the Hilton-Milner theorem, that in the Hilton-Milner set system, we just add one set which doesn't contain n, and then we remove the conflicted sets from the star, which are disjoint. So to get a typical intersecting family, we add some arbitrary collection of sets, just one major restriction that they should be intersecting with each other. And other restriction would be that if we define a auxiliary graph on this system, or the way that we put an edge between two sets, if they differ only by one element, that one has to remove one element and add another element, so then we put an edge. So then the restriction would be that the graph on this should have only components of size 1 or 2. So again, what we are doing is we put here an intersecting family such that the graph spans components of sizes 1 or 2, and then we remove the sets from the star which are disjoint from those elements, and in the rest we take an arbitrary subsets of sets. So one could ask that, why is it 1 or 2? Why not we are making, let's say, sizes of 3? And here in this computation, I try to get a little feelings. So what is the number of ways to choose a set? It's about 2k, choose k. And if I choose this set, then I have to remove the k disjoint sets from here. So when I'm choosing the subset of a star, I lose a factor of 2 to the k. And the gain is big because we gain about 2 to the 2k. So it's worthwhile to choose such a set AI. If we are going for a component of size 2, then the number of choices is roughly that we take choose the first vertex of a component, and for the second vertex we have only k-square choices because of this limitation. So for the number of choices we are gaining that factor, and we are losing practically 2 neighborhoods. So the loss is 2 to the 2k's, and but the gain is about like a k to the 3 halves. So it's worthwhile to have a component of size 2. But when we have a component of size 3, then here we just gain a polynomial factor, but we are losing in the exponent other k. So it doesn't work to have a components of size 3. And what we conjecture that these are the typical families, and if one runs the polymer method, then one can compute this perturbations quite precisely. The reason that we cannot get a better bound is that we cannot just choose these sets randomly. We have to keep them independently. Okay, so that's one direction. I'm not going to talk about this direction in the rest of the talk, but I thought that I share this conjecture. Okay, so maybe it's a good point to ask question if there is any. If no question, then I'm talking about other extension of Erdős-Ko-Rado Theorem, and it started by a paper of Bollobás, Balogh, Narayanan, and Raigorodskii. And for this setup, maybe it's useful to look the definition of the so-called Kneser graph. So the vertex set of the Kneser graphs are the k-element sets, and 2 sets A and B are joined by an edge if and only if the 2 sets are disjoint. So the Erdős-Ko-Rado Theorem is just stating that what is the size of the largest independent set, and it states that it's corresponding to a vertex set of star. So the question that they raised is that studied that what's happening when we look at p-random subgraph. So in this p-random subgraph, we keep each edge with probability p, and as from the previous talk, that similar questions on the hypercube were studied by Bollobás and Kostocska. I will mention a little bit in more details what they did when I actually state results. So the question that we are looking for, that for what p we have that the independence number of this random subgraph of the Kneser graph is still exactly equal to the size of a star. And as before, this problem is easier when k is smaller. So for example, this paper, Bollobás, Narayanan, Raigorodskii solved this question when k is little o n to the 1/3. But in this talk, I would like to focus on the other end when n is equal to 2k plus 1. And some people think that that's the most interesting case and maybe the hardest case. And for this value, the threshold should be at p is equal to 3/4. And the reason for this is that, again, this perturbation property that if we have a star, so a collection of sets which contains the element n, then we wonder if we could add a set which is not in the star. So we can add such a set if all the edges from that set toward the star were eliminated. So the probability of this is that we eliminate an edge with probability 1 minus p, and there are k of those edges, so we have to eliminate all of them. But the number of choices for a is 2k choose k, and if we want to be precise, then we have to mention the number of choices for n. And if we look at this function, so this is the expected number of sets A which could be added, and if p is slightly larger than 3/4, then this expected number is little o1. So we cannot do small perturbation, but if p is under 3/4, then the expected number of these sets is going to infinity, and it's standard to prove that then with high probability, actually one can add such a set. So at least this shows that if p is less than 3/4, then the star is not the largest independent set. But it doesn't prove that if p is larger, then the star is the independent set. It just proves that one cannot find a larger independent set just by adding one set. So this problem got some attention. For these values, Devlin and Kahn, instead of 3/4, they prove that if p is separated from 1 by a constant, then the independence number is exactly the star. And but with Bob Krueger and Haoran law, we proved recently is that indeed p is equal to 3/4 is the sharp threshold. And we actually proved a little bit more. So we determined the sharp threshold for every n and k. Note that it was known when k was little o n. And we actually proved the hitting time result, not for every n and k, but for many values of pairs, including n is equal to 2k plus 1. So what is a hitting time result? It is that we add edges 1 by 1, and we stop adding edges when we eliminated the last trivial obstacle. The trivial obstacle is this one set perturbation that I was talking before. So we stop, and then we look around, and we can observe that we already hit the event that the independence number is the star. And so an interesting story about it, that we looked at what other problems could be done, and we realized that nobody really wrote a paper about it, despite having many results on this topic for the hypercube. So what's happening for the hypercube? What is the sharp threshold for the same event that the independence number is equal to the half of the vertices? And Bob indeed worked out all the details and gave a talk at our seminar. And Kostochka pointed out that it's very, very similar to one of his results from like 30 years ago. And it turned out that he proved hitting time result for the existence for a perfect matching in the hypercube. And if someone thinks a little bit, then realizes that using like Galois theorem, if there is perfect matching, then the independence number is exactly half of the vertices. So not stating it, but he actually proved the same result for the hypercube, and this was also proved by Bollobás independently of him at the same time. So, but luckily the Kneser graph is not bipartite, so the result seems to be safe. Here, let me state some open problems. You don't have to be happy. I'm not finishing the talk after the open problem, but before I get lost in the sketch of the proofs, I thought that it's useful to try to stay clear as long as I can. So one open problem is that we by Tom Bowman and Dhruv Muboi, that what's happening if instead of keeping edges with a probability P, we are keeping vertices with the probability P. Then for what P, we can say that the largest intersecting subfamily of the set system, which remains, is a star. And here one can ask this question for every k and n, and again the probably the most interesting case when n is equal to 2k plus 1. And here again we expect that there is a change in behavior at p is equal to 3/4, and actually for the same reasons. And here Hammond can't prove the same thing when p is at least 1 minus epsilon, and their proof is using heavily ideas similar to the Schaffhausenko's graph container method. But despite the two problems are similar, we were not able to get here the p is equal to 3/4. And a little bit different, but similar in spirit, one can mention a recent problem for general graphs. So it was conjectured by I think Friedgut, Kalai, and Kindler, and proved some results in a recent paper of Nogo-Alon. So what is the conjecture? So assume that we fix alpha a constant, then for this alpha there exists an epsilon such that every n vertex graph with independence number alpha times n has the property that if we keep vertices with probability 1/2, or one could say that we are looking almost spanning subgraphs has independence number strictly less than the independence number of the graph before. The strictly less is that here this constant is strictly less, and somewhat surprisingly this is open. What Noga alone proved that if alpha is separated from 1/4, then the statement is true, or if the graph is regular, then if alpha is larger than 1/8. That's a really nice related problem. Any question, comment? Okay, so let's go back to the hypercube, and I will continue with a related result or related problem, and that's Sperner theorem in the Boolean lattice.
Oh, József, I have a question. So,
Yes.
If you go up the conjecture about the independence number of almost all subgraphs bounding away from the original graph, does it have implication to the average size of independent set?
Sorry.
Does it imply some upper bound on the average size of the independent sets?
Sorry, there is some background noise. Let me try to stop the background noise. Okay, sorry, I had to stop the background noise. So can you repeat the question?
Okay, my question is, suppose this is true, that alpha of G prime is bounding away from alpha of G, then does it have implication to the, does it give some sort of upper bound on the average size of the independent sets in G?
It's not on the average size, it's on the, it's practically what is behind is counting the number of maximum or close to maximum independent sets. I don't think that it has implication for the average size.
Okay.
Because if the independent set is already the smaller than the maximum independent set, like strictly separated, then we don't have to worry about removing vertices. So this problem is about counting close to maximum independent sets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it's somewhat different. So that part is using basic graph container method, but there are some other tricks. It's a very nice short paper. Okay, so the last topic which is related is the so-called Sperner theorem. So the Sperner theorem states that if you have the Boolean lattice on the set system of an n-element ground set, then the largest anti-chain is one of the middle layers where it depends on the parity of n. So the random version is that we keep sets with probability Tp, and we are interested in the size of the largest anti-chain. And actually this can be originated back to Rényi, who proved that if P is smaller, then actually the random set system is an anti-chain. So it's a different type of problem. More work about 20 years ago were done by Krueger and Osthus, where they looked at the random system and were interested in the largest anti-chain, and they wanted to know that for what P it is true that the largest anti-chain has asymptotically sized, that we take the middle layer and we keep elements with probability P. So this subindex can be a multiplicative factor for the size. And here we are with the Mycroft and Treglund, we use the two-phase basic graph container method to prove actually this result. But that's different from the question that we are interested. We are interested determining the P where the actual largest anti-chain is in one layer. So, and there's lots of difference, because here when the largest anti-chain is getting similar to the middle layer, it's happening much earlier. Here we are interested in the event that the largest anti-chain is entirely in one of the layers. And here again, P is when P is about 3/4, then by the same reasons we have the transition. So when P is less than 3/4, then we can take one layer, keep all the random elements, and perturb it from sets which are just above it. And if we look in this form, then it's getting very similar to the previous theorems. And indeed, Ham and Kahn are just running the same proof that what they had for the Erdős-Ko-Rado, that if P is larger than 1 minus epsilon, then the largest anti-chain is in one layer. And with the we proved recently, it should be on archive in a couple of days, we proved a similar hitting time results when P is at least 1/2. So note that here I said that the difference should be at 3/4, and here I'm claiming that we are proving hitting time result at 1/2. So the hitting time results are along the lines that when P is larger than 1/2, then the perturbations are coming just that we have sets which are just above the middle layer, which we can add, and I call them singletons because they are far from each other in this graph theoretic distance that I had for the Extremal. So the problem is really similar to the Erdős-Ko-Rado theorem. And if someone is really following what I'm saying, then can get surprised that for the Sperner, we are able to prove the 3/4, because this actually proving the 3/4, because if we keep P increasing, then when P is about 3/4, then the singletons disappear. So that settles this question. So the surprising thing is that this problem looks really similar to the random version of the Erdős-Ko-Rado, the vertex random version. So one would think that the same method is actually would work. And actually, we were also thinking that it works, but for some technical reasons, it actually doesn't work. So the previous question is still open. And not sure at how much time I have. I have 5 minutes or 10.
You have 5 more minutes.
Okay, so I try to say some of the ideas from the, not from the latest result, but from the random Erdős-Ko-Rado. And I probably won't have time to explain too many things, but the proof is actually quite short, in particular when we are considering the case n is equal to 2k plus 1. So one important step which appears in practically all of the papers is that if we have a k-uniform set system, then from the k-uniform set system, we are making a bipartite graph, which are with vertexes on 2 layers. So this reduction step is the following, that let's say we choose from the ground set the most frequent element, and we partition the hyperedges into 2 classes, depending on if n is in the set or n is not in the set. And now we eliminate this vertex. So we are removing the element n from every set which contains it. So we decrease the dimension by 1, and we decrease the sizes by 1. And for the sets which are not containing n, we take the complement, but complement on ground set of size n-1. So we create a system on a different layer, and we are forming a bipartite graph, and we put an edge if we have a containment. And the completely elementary observation is that if we started with an intersecting set system, then for these sets, what we are creating, we create an independent set. And here we just have to check this definition that indeed, if we had a containment, then the sets were intersecting in H. So this let us transform the problem to count independent sets in the graph, and we have the entire layers with all these edges, and one can run Schaffhausen-code advanced graph container method. Here we are losing something because not all independent set gives intersecting family, and unfortunately I don't have time to discuss this proof, which is actually not so long, but takes more than 1 minute. So in case you've seen a container method, then a container method is about that choosing a small certificate for some big events, and there are some theorems which are doing this certificates. So one can use them as a black box. For these proofs, instead what we are doing, and then these ideas were there in all the previous papers, in particular, where one of the authors were József Kahn, is that we are choosing some random certificates with some properties. Particularly, we want the certificates to be small, and they should certify many events. But I think I really have to stop now, so I stop at that moment. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask.
I have one silly question, maybe. So you have this random subgraph of Kneser graph, and then thought about the maximum size of stable set. I wonder what you can say for like chromatic numbers or the fraction of chromatic numbers, because for chromatic number the problem is harder, right? Like, even for the Kneser graphs. So
yes, there are papers which are studying it. It's and I think the results are when the k is smaller than n, but we haven't looked into that topic. So it could be that one can find interesting in that direction, but
oh, I see. Somebody wrote on the chat. Yeah.
the co-author might have a better coffee. Yes, he's mentioning a bit of Kupavskii.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's take the speaker.